Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody, members of the Commission and others, and everybody present and watching online to the meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Commission, 4th of June 2026. It's now 10 o'clock, so we'll get started with today's meeting and move straight on to item 1, which are the minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of March 2026, which I will have to sign. Are members happy to agree the minutes of the meeting? Yes, thank you. You've got the minutes, Ruth? Thank you. Thank you. That makes that official. Thank you very much. Item 2 on our agenda is apologies and substitutes. Note apology absent, substitutes in attendance. Ruth, have we got any apologies, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, we've received apologies from Councillor Hunter-Clark, Councillor Turner, Councillor Land, and we have Councillor Westman as substitute for Councillor Hunter-Clark and Councillor Bambridge as substitute for Councillor Turner. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and welcome to Councillor Bambridge and Councillor Westman. Thank you very much for substituting today. It's much appreciated. I know you've both, I think, been to the Commission before, but your participation is welcome any time. And could I remind members, if you're unable to attend the meeting, please send in your apologies as soon as possible, and please try to arrange a substitute wherever possible. It doesn't have to be a named substitute. Item 3 is the Chairman's announcements. I don't have any announcements. Item 4 is urgent business. I haven't had any items suggested as urgent and don't propose to accept any item as urgent. Haven't got any received. Item 5 is our declarations of interests. These are the duties to register, disclose, not to participate for the entire consideration of the matter, in respect of any matter in which a member has a disclosable pecuniary, that means financial, looking at our solicitor here, as set out in Chapter 7 of the Localism Act. Members are required also to withdraw from the meeting room as stated in standards of the Council. Have members any interest to declare? No. Thank you very much, members. If any non-members come in, we will note their name, and they can also contribute after members of the Commission have spoken, and also welcome officers attending the meeting today, either contributing or observing. Thank you very much. Item 7 is the Executive Member Portfolio Brief. Councillor Helen Crane. This is receive an update from Councillor Helen Crane, Executive Member for a very long title for Waste, Environmental Health, Licensing and Sustainability. It's a long title, but lots of very important areas of which residents, businesses all rely on. Also, it's a large financial commitment from this really quite a complex portfolio. I'm sure that members will have read with interest the comprehensive slides that Helen Crane's forwarded already, and the highlights. In particular, I know there's a new item which members will have a separate briefing on, which is about the new food waste arrangements for domestic residents. But now I'd like to welcome Helen and invite her and the team to update the Commission on your portfolio. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Commission, for inviting me here today. And I'm pleased to give you an update on my portfolio. In the year 25-26, environmental health, licensing and community safety. Sorry, have we got the first slide? Sorry, hang on, just get the first slide up. Hopefully makes sense. So in the year ended 26, environmental health, licensing and community safety delivered one of its strongest years to date. A year defined by high operational throughput, strengthened resilience and visible community impact. Our teams managed substantial volumes while maintaining high regulatory standards. We processed 2,788 land charges and responded to over 3,000 service requests, demonstrating both capacity and consistency across all core functions. Operationally, performance remained robust. We completed 750 food and water inspections, handled more than 1,440 licensing applications, issued over 290 temporary event notices, and carried out extensive taxi and animal licensing checks. We also undertook 185 food samples, reinforcing our preventative approach to public protection. Enforcement activity was significant and meaningful. This included the closure of unsafe premises for hygiene and gas safety breaches, a major investigation into a petting farm incident, and an ongoing investigation into a fatality, all demonstrating our commitment to safeguarding residents and visitors. Beyond local delivery, we continued to influence national practice. Breckland's leadership of the UK-wide Health and Safety Motorsport Working Group, now with 59 members, positioned us as a key voice in shaping sector-wide standards. Next slide, sir. Over the past year, we've made significant progress across corporate health and safety, emergency planning, and business continuity. We've completed a full overhaul of our rest centre plans and brought new centres online, including the Charles Burrell Centre. This gives us stronger, more flexible capacity to support communities during emergencies. We've also rolled out a new community resilience template to parish councils, helping strengthen preparedness at a local level. And alongside this, we delivered a comprehensive training programme from emergency planning sessions for Cabinet and members to conflict management for training for the senior management team and face-to-face training for 109 staff. Every business continuity plan has now been updated and exercised, and we've successfully adopted a new e-learning platform with excellent compliance across the organisation. Turning to community safety, environmental protection and public engagement, this has been another standout year. Our dog warden service received multiple RSPCA awards, including prestigious platinum recognition, reflecting the high standards of our animal welfare work. We've delivered a series of high visibility community safety campaigns, including the Summer and Winter of Action plans, Ask Angela, Drink Spiking Awareness, the Scrap Fly Tipping Initiative, and the Community Alcohol Partnership in Thetford, which has now also been launched in Dereham. Our Safer Street Wardens have had a major impact, delivering over 1,000 hours of visible patrols and more than 1,500 meaningful interactions with the public. They've issued over 200 warnings and supported licence revocations where necessary. Finally, we've strengthened our partnership working with the police and housing associations, improving intelligence sharing and boosting public reassurance across our communities. Overall, the service strengthened its resilience, improved organisational preparedness, and delivered clear, measurable community benefits. This was a year of strong regulatory assurance, high performance, and impactful intervention. Next slide. Lovely. Now, last time I presented, we went into a lot of detail about the range of activity environmental services provide, and I'm conscious that this time members have asked for a spotlight on food waste collections, so I have just touched on a few KPIs for the service. As you can see, performance for Q4 has been really positive, and it's important to note that we have seen a dramatic increase in the number of road closures in the district over the last year or so, requiring our contractor to take steps to either return for inaccessible bins or make alternative collection methods. The data for our garden waste service performance remains strong, with over 26,500 subscribers currently. Members should be aware that we recently suspended curbside collections of batteries and WEEE. This followed a fire at the Wiser reprocessing plant in Thetford. Wiser had been allocated to us by the producer compliance scheme to collect our material from the depot and take it off for pre-processing. After the fire, we were obliged to reach out to the PCS scheme to be allocated another alternative collection company, and this has proved challenging. There are challenges in the marketplace, with one other large company going into administration recently and another significant fire in a plant elsewhere in the country. We have now been advised a new company has been allocated, and we await an update on when collections might commence so that we can restart our curbside collections that our residents really appreciate. Next slide. Moving on now to the simpler recycling agenda. As you can see, the new legislation requires councils to change services in a number of areas. These new requirements have been broken down into a number of work streams which officers have been working on for some time now. In recognition of the scale of complexity of the programme, a governance group was set up, including officers and members, to steer and monitor the progress of the programme and component projects. You can see a number of projects and trials have been completed, and I will touch on some of those shortly, whilst others are detailed and complex and still in progress. Next slide, please. One of the first requirements under the simpler recycling was for local authorities to provide commercial waste food collections to businesses or make provision for businesses to be supported to access collection services from third parties. The requirement for large-scale businesses, those with more than 10 full-time employees, to separate their food waste and have it collected came into effect in April 2025. And for micro businesses, less than 10 FTEs, the requirement comes into effect in April 2027. In response to this requirement and in recognition of our own growing trade waste service, Breckland implemented a separate food waste collection service. Now, this was initially targeted at existing larger scale customers and has since been rolled out to some smaller business who were keen to get ahead of the game. This slide represents some important statistics relating to our overall trade waste service. And as you can now see, we have in excess of 600 customers with an annual renewal rate of 95%, representing high levels of satisfaction with our customers. Those businesses who haven't renewed on the whole have either moved out of the district, folded, or not been offered a renewal due to bad debt. The team have shifted a large proportion of customers onto direct debit. They have visited a number of schools holding assemblies, as well as conducting 150 waste audits for customers. 489 tonnes of recycling material has been collected from Breckland businesses, as well as 125 tonnes of food waste in the last year. And we have collected over 34,500 bins. Next slide, please. This slide shows the overall financial position of the trade waste service, generating a surplus of nearly £179,000. Our operating surplus is in line with market standards, and the team have been really proactive at reducing age debts down to just 1k in the period. As you can see, in isolation, the food waste service ran at a deficit in its first year. Now, this deficit was anticipated due to the initial set-up costs. And having said that, the deficit was lower than expected and growth was greater than predicted. The forecast for the future is positive and business is growing month to month, as a previous slide illustrated. You will note that the turnover for waste and recycling has increased by over 33%, and when combined with food waste, this equates to the 42% increase in turnover illustrated on the previous slide. As I have said, forecast for the service is positive, seeing growth of 42% last year. The team have also trialled some smaller food caddies for businesses ready for go live of micro businesses collections next year. And this has worked really well for customers and has assisted in the initial take-up of the service. Next slide. Moving on to the collections of food waste from households. This is probably the most complex and challenging project within the programme. The simpler recycling agenda required all collection authorities to collect food waste from households from April 2026. Where local authorities were unable to meet this requirement, they were required to notify DEFRA of the reasons why, and indeed many local authorities across the country have done this. It is important to note that officers started the planning for this back in 2024. However, it has been complicated due to delays in information coming from government, supply chain challenges, and the operational, logistical and complex work required to implement a new service such as this. Next slide, please. There are a number of component parts for the implementation of this service. Planning routing options commenced in 2024. This work was based on multiple delivery locations in order to prepare for any outcome of the procurement of the disposal sites. It also dictated the number of vehicles that would be required to deliver the service, and these were ordered in March 2025. Food waste disposal procurement was completed during 2025, with the site identified for disposal of Breckland material being based in Attleborough. This site processes food waste and generates gas, which is fed into the grid locally. Caddy and bin procurement has been completed, and these start arriving in June. Caddy and bin delivery procurement is also completed. This is a company who will physically deliver the receptacles to residents, and the deliveries will start the week commencing the 3rd of August and the 7th of September. The team have developed a communication plan which will inform residents of the new service, what can be put in the caddies, when and how they will be collected, and how to report issues. Comms have also been developed to allow elected members to support residents should they have concerns or confusion. In order to implement the service, an extension to the existing depot is required. This gained planning permission late last year, and following a discharge of condition process, works commence imminently. This extension will provide parking space for the additional 14 vehicles and staff cars. A detailed service delivery plan has been developed and agreed in order for the new service to be operated. A recruitment programme has been developed and rollout has commenced by our contractor, working with both ourselves and the DWP. And finally, our digital processes have been designed and updated to reflect the introduction of the new service. And these web forms and scripts will go live at the point the service starts. This slide gives you a snapshot of some of the comms activity that is planned. It includes written briefings to members, drop-in sessions for members, for towns and parish councils. It will provide videos to show residents what the service looks like and how to use it. Our social media campaign will inform residents of the progress of rollout and inform them of when their patch will start receiving collections. Residents will receive information directly relating to their collections alongside their caddies and bins. This will inform them what they can and cannot put in and which day their collection will be. It will explain how they can line their caddies if they would like to, and how to present their waste for collection. Here is a high-level summary timeline showing you the rollout to residents and the comms activity. We won't pause on that for long because you've seen it. Next slide, please. As I am sure you can appreciate, a project of this scale is not without risks. Vehicle delays have already moved back the initial service rollout date, and whilst we have been given confirmation that our current delivery dates remain on track, we are aware of other local authorities who have been notified of further delays. Depot delays. The planning process for this site was complex due to the requirement of a number of ecology surveys and took longer than the original anticipate. Whilst building is on target for rollout, we cannot anticipate weather conditions, which may put this back slightly. However, contingency plans are in place for any short-term delays. The uptake by residents. Whilst we have to deliver the service regardless of uptake, we do know, as we have had feedback from residents already, that some residents are against this service. Whilst it is their choice whether they participate or not, additional demand is placed on the service, and the contractor should people seek to complain or make additional inquiries relating to the implementation of the new service. Recruitment is something officers have raised as a concern with DEFRA since the original simpler recycling announcement was made. Concerns exist about the availability of resources locally to run the service, especially when other councils in Norfolk are rolling out at a similar time. Supply chain challenges continue. This hasn't just affected vehicle purchase, but also the availability of caddies, bins, and logistics companies with the capacity to deliver to the residents locally. And that takes me now on to Breckland 2035. I am incredibly proud of what we have achieved, and more latterly, the continued activity under the Working Smarter 2035 strategic theme. We have invested to support economic, social, and environmental sustainability. Economically, we have leveraged in almost an additional £700,000 to support our initial £525,000 investment. We work with partners to secure grants and additional funding, the majority of which have reduced running costs and promoted long-term financial sustainability. All of the activities have had a significant social benefit, promoting well-being, health and safety. We have transparently shown leadership, the governance element, promoting sustainability to support, educate and drive positive behaviour change. And finally, we have worked to protect the natural resources and assets, environmental, that Breckland is famous for. Next slide, Sarah. The next three slides cover some of the fantastic deliveries. I will pick out a couple to talk about in more detail. We reached out to parishes and community groups across Breckland and ended up working with over 40 community groups, providing over £100,000 directly to those groups to deliver various initiatives, including lighting, moving to LED enhancements, various tree planting, including orchard initiatives, pond renovation works, allotment enhancements, and EV charging, just to name a few. Also, I was thrilled to work with the National Trust at the stunning Oxburgh Hall to plant 2,400 trees. I didn't plant the 2,400 myself, but I did do one or two. I think I did the first and the last. Slide 16, please, Sarah. We collaborated with Oppergy and Zeller to support 39 businesses in developing a decarbonisation plan. Not only did they generate less carbon, but their running costs reduced by thousands of pounds annually, and their decarbonisation plans helped them with contract tenders as well as accessing further grant funding, which was a triple win. Whilst the private sector has really ramped up in this space, we moved early to provide EV charging points, and following contract renewals, we moved to have 8 chargers, which is 16 bays in our car parks in each of our market towns, which operates on a very modest profit share agreement, but critically, this is of nil cost to Breckland. The last slide, I think, Sarah. The key point on this slide is we can't do it on our own. We continue to collaborate with various partners to support residents and businesses in their sustainability journey, which is essential as, from my perspective, No one is protected from the cost of living increases. And that brings me to the end of my presentation, and I have these wonderful officers either side of me to help take any questions. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank
and if
you.
I can't answer them, I'll pass
Thank
them
you
on
very
to
much,
officers.
Helen, for your comprehensive presentation. I hope it will be helpful. I'd suggest to members that we should take questions in possibly 3 sections, so it's relating to the very broad portfolio you've got there. If that may help you, the team, and also when we're sort of compiling a record of the meeting, if we divide that, if members are happy, obviously you can, so we're not jumping around. If we did first lot of questions, anyone around that's got environmental health and recycling, then food waste and 2035, and that might make a better way rather than people jumping backwards and forwards and different questions. Of course, I'm sure there'll be other questions that you may think of when you've left the room, but if you do after the meeting, but if you do have any, send those into Ruth, or Director Helen, and we'll make sure obviously those all go out to all members. Obviously it's much better if we have the questions and answers in the meeting. There may be some that the team can't provide today. So I'd like to throw that open if anyone has got any questions, particularly around inspections, targeted enforcements, health and safety, the dog warden service, safety campaigns, garden waste, street cleansing performance. Question I was going to ask was around highways and litter, and who might fine people of the highways. Is it the highways agency or Breckland? That was the last slide there. So I think any questions on environmental health and recycling and business waste first for Helen and the team. Thank you, members. First one, I see Councillor Westman and then Councillor Eagle.
With a fire and then the company going into administration, I think you mentioned that hopefully there's another company waiting in the wings. Are you able to give some kind of time frame as to when hopefully negotiations will be concluded and the recycling batteries can be recommenced?
Thank you very much. And yes, our residents are concerned about that, and the fire was most concerning in the back of that lorry. And I continuously urge people not to put electrical items or batteries. It's very tempting because we haven't got the curbside collections at the moment, but you know, either hold on to them, or all outlets that sell batteries have to have depository schemes where they take batteries back. So please, can they do that? I'm going to pass on to Rihanna because I don't have a date for you, and I'm not, you know, I'll ask her to see if she can give you any more information.
Yeah, thank you. So it's probably worth sort of setting in context our curbside collections of batteries and is a tiny part of a much bigger system. As you'll be aware, the household recycling centres across Norfolk, some of those have been affected as well in terms of being able to dispose of things like fridges, freezers and other electrical items. So County Council, along with us and other people that offer similar services, have to go through the producer compliance scheme. And as you can imagine, with a number of plants across the country either closed or overwhelmed, that's taking quite a bit of time. We are confident that we are about halfway through the process of getting a new company that's able to collect from the depots. You'll be aware, because of our waste contract, it's not just for Breckland, it's for North Norfolk and Kings Lynn as well. So we're all in it together. We've provided them with all of our data, our volumes, the type of materials that we produce, and the level of frequency of collection that we would need based on what we can store at the depots. So I can't give you a date right now. What I can say is that some aspects of electrical item disposal is starting to move in the system. So we are starting to see, and you will probably have seen yourself from County Council posts, that some items are now being accepted at household recycling centres. So we're urging our residents to, if you need to get rid of stuff and, you know, either take it back to the collection points that Helen's pointed out in terms of supermarkets, etc., look at the household recycling centre information in the local area to see what can be taken there, and they are all different at the moment. And as soon as we have a curbside collector that's able to dispose of our material, then we will recommence our service.
Michael, you got another question?
I did, but I'm aware Councillor Regal wanted to say something, but I did have another one for later.
All right. Thank you, Councillor. I've got a few, so I'll do one at a time. First of all, can I just declare an interest, please, because I am actually a business waste customer. So just on that point. But first of all, the first question is, obviously you've got a substantial profit on your waste line. How much of that is actually due to you not charging VAT on the waste items when it is? And if you're a small business and obviously not VAT registered, it does. Because when I shop around, and I've stuck with Breckland because I think you're the councillor and you've got a show willing and it looks better, the bin. Some of the other ones are now being more competitive. And if you are not, if you were VAT registered, you're actually more expensive. So I just wondered how much of your profit is actually coming from serving non-VAT registered customers. Because otherwise you've got a flawed business model.
That one is the financials, and that's quite in depth for me. So I'm going to get that to be written to you about. I mean, I think it's been a huge advantage, the fact that we don't charge VAT to small businesses. But what that profit would be, or that surplus would be, I don't know. So I'm going to have to let that one go. I'm afraid, Councillor, that will have to come in a written answer, I think, unless anyone here can. I've got no one financial here to tell you what that is. I'm sorry.
Well, you were the financial bureau.
No, not in that. I mean, all I know is that there's, you know, the smaller businesses that are not VAT resident. Bearing in mind, I think the VAT threshold is now about £80,000. There will be a lot of small businesses that are not VAT registered, and so that is a huge advantage to them. But I will get that, Chairman, if that's all right, that answer to you.
Can I just come back on that one point, and then I'll alternate my questions again. On the plus point, it is good news for those that are non-VAT registered, but I do find that we don't promote it enough, that we're actually, this is a non-VATable service. So when someone comes up for the businesses, if they're not aware, and particularly if we say our small high street businesses or anything else, it would give us a significant advantage on that point to actually make that, because it's going to be that go-to point, because obviously there's 20% there saved. And I don't think we promote that enough to make sure we're attracting that business, because really, if you're in Breckland and you're using a commercial waste service, if you're non-VAT registered, you shouldn't be using anyone else apart from the Breckland services. So that would come down another point of failing, that if we have not got every non-VAT registered business using our waste service.
Thank you for pointing that out. And I will take that back. We do have an officer that actually is pretty good at going around all the companies, but we'll see if we can get some comms out a bit more on that, the fact that we don't, we're not VAT registered. Thank you.
Again, Chair, every time we mention this, I always raise this, and that's always the same response. It's not the first time I've raised it with you, Helen, and everyone else on the officers, and I've mentioned it to the businesses when they come to my waste or anything else. So that's why I'm raising it again, because, you know, we've got to generate that income.
We have indeed, and we do send letters out, the business newsletter and that, don't we? And so therefore we'll perhaps pick that up. We will pick it up and make sure that that is reiterated in all the business letters that go out to our businesses.
Again, we've got a fairly substantial and a wide cross of social media. The first thing you just need to put is, do you want to save 20%? What business does not want to save 20%? If it's tucked in that little leaflet, by the time they've gone through the first bits, other things to do. we've got to hit that hard. And I just think, you know, we're slacking on that point.
Thanks very much, Fabian. I'm sure Helen and the team have heard that, and you know, we'll note any of your constructive suggestions. If we go back to Councillor Westman, and then after that we'll have David Wickerson.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, a few slides back, I think I saw that you'd got the debt levels down from 10,000 to 1,000. Great. How? How have you done that?
Persistency by the team in obviously getting the debt back, also cancelling services for those that you can see, but we don't renew if someone has got a debt. But it was a high debt when the officer, I'll mention his name, Duncan, took over from it, was in a high debt position, and he has brought that down through persistency and getting people to pay. I don't think we've taken anyone to court. I think it's just through persistency by officers, especially if someone wants the service to continue. They won't have it continued unless they pay their bill. And you will see that in one or two of the cases, we do not renew the contract. We've been very strict about that since he's come on board.
Councillor Wickerson, David.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of quick questions, really. I may have missed it. If I did, I apologise. The frequency of waste collection is going to be weekly. Okay, that's good. That's excellent. The other question I had, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman, is regarding street cleaning. I know you mentioned that you had 45 requests, mostly relating to highways, which requires their permission to do that. Is there a schedule set anywhere for regular street cleaning in the town, like Swaffham, for example, in terms of not necessarily in the marketplace, but just residential areas? And one good example is where we happen to live, in Whitecross Road, and we've worked out that it's in fact, it takes, in terms of driving time, from the McDonald's at the roundabout to our driveway is when they finish eating their hamburgers in the car and throw rubbish out of the car window. And we're forever collecting
Not right,
rubbish.
That's my gate.
What?
That's not right, that's my gate.
Anyway, just a comment about frequency of street cleaning generally in the towns.
I believe there is a schedule, but I'm going to let Rihanna answer that.
Thanks, Rihanna. Thank you.
Yeah, so in terms of the town centres, obviously they're classed as grade A areas, so they will need to be brought up to the right standard on a daily basis. So that's why you'll see the Glutton, Barrow-Beats crews out collecting in the town centres. So that is a daily function. In terms of the slightly wider out areas where we have a duty to sweep streets, that is on a schedule of every 8 weeks. Obviously that doesn't always happen perfectly if cars are parked in the way, etc. So sometimes it could be more frequent, sometimes it could be less frequent. But there are schedules in place to ensure that sweeping and litter picking is conducted to keep the areas outside town centres at the standard required.
Thank you. Before we go to the next speaker, in terms of any sort of standard sort of schedule of cleansing, particularly in the towns, if that isn't published, or could that be at least available to members if it isn't, made already? What could be expected? Because then people can say, well, don't worry, the next cleaning is going to be 2 days' time, etc. Unless there's an ad hoc requirement that's come up. Thank you. I see Gordon Bambridge and then Peter Wilkinson. Gordon.
Thank you. I have 2 comments and then a question on this section, and then I do want to come back when you get on the food waste. The comments are from the mist bins on page 15. I think 90% of the mist bins in Breckland have been in my street over the last couple of months. And I did just want to say, yes, we have had mist bins and they have all been picked up within the normal period from them. So I did just want to say thank you and well done for when there is a misbin, getting it right. I also wanted to compliment you generally. I don't know who it really is. 40 community groups with only 120 communities in Breckland, or under 120. I mean, that's a third of all communities have had some input into this. So well done with that. But the question I wanted to ask is, I have had problems in recent times with understanding quite how the dog warden system now works. And I think it would be good if, as members, we could have some indication of what exactly parishes in particular, and in particular when they're talking about dog problems on public areas such as playing fields and that, how Breckland actually work that. I appreciate you might want to do it in writing, and I'm happy for that, but I would like a better understanding for me as a councillor to pass on to my communities. Oh, sorry.
Thanks ever so much for that, Gordon. Yes, I think we all generally think of the dog warden that picks up the strays, etc., etc. And what you're asking for is really the scope of what the dog warden does. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get that. Craig, unfortunately, isn't here, but Sarah, shall we make sure we get something out to members of the commission about the scope of what the dog warden does, unless you want to talk about it now. But I think perhaps a written example of what the dog warden does would be better. No, nothing's changed. Nothing has changed, basically, but what you're saying is we need to elaborate on it a bit more. What is available for town and parish councils when they have problems in their parks, etc. Yeah.
Well, I think it has changed, but perhaps too much.
And I'll make sure you get that. And I think most of that, what you're talking about, actually comes into the service now as opposed to the dog warden. So that could well be where the change has taken place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helen. Thank you, Gordon. Next, Peter Wilkinson. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Just picking up on it's actually just sparked something what Gordon said about the dog warden. If public and members do not report massive dog fouling to the warden, then that's deemed as not having a problem there. Because I had it in one of my villages a couple of years ago, and he said, I've checked I had loads of people complaining. I actually picked it up myself near the school when I was walking through the village, and he said, I've checked the records. The last 18 months, I've only had 2 complaints, and he said one of them was from you, myself. So that needs to be addressed by members of the public instead of moaning on social media. Report it. Just coming back on to the household food waste, if I may, Chairman. You said about the warehouse, Helen. I'm just wondering. Something about that was for lorries, was it? Not for what's going to happen to the waste when it's collected? Does it go straight to a composting depot and not stored?
Yeah, we haven't got a transfer station, have we, that will go straight to Attleborough?
Are we talking
Food waste?
Yeah, no, direct delivery.
It'll be direct delivered to the Attleborough AD plant, where it will be turned into gas and sent to the grid locally. Okay.
I'm pleased to know that, because obviously there was an issue where we could have probably, if the government hadn't forced this, we've always said to residents, do not put your food waste in garden waste, because that is stored somewhere before it's taken away, and that would bring in vermin, but it's nice to know it's going straight to the composter. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Helen. Councillor Richmond.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, emergency planning on page 14, Helen. It says that the rest centre plans have been refreshed and there's new centres on board. I was wondering if you could give us some details of the key changes, please, that have been made.
think it would be a good idea if we actually got that out to all members where the rest centres are actually, because I admit that that is actually very, very brief. Yes, we have extended it, they have all been refurbished. I have been told which ones they are, but you don't know. And actually, to be honest, I think that is quite key that members are aware if they've got a rest centre in their patch. So I appreciate that, and we'll get that out to all members, please.
Thank you. I think Councillor Eagle had another question, Lumi. Thank you.
I've got a few actually, but if everyone else has finished. Just coming back to the battery point. A while back, we were going to have battery pouches hanging on the bins, but I never saw one, and that was going to be these little caddy things to hang on the back.
Not to my knowledge, Councillor Eagle, no, it was a case of people putting them in bags and putting them on top of the thing. I haven't heard anything since I've had the portfolio anyway about pouches. Have you anything from you?
That's fine. It's just one statement is obviously we've got to make it's a behavioural change for people, and should we say it's still convenient. You've got one or two batteries to bung those into their general bin and then go into it, and they see them as so small and insignificant that, shall we say, to put it in Norfolk terms, it's not worth the faff to go and worry about it putting something. So not as we can do something to encourage that behavioural change, we're still going to keep getting those fires or anything else. And I think we've got to look at some way of making it easier, convenient, become an acceptable choice of behaviour.
And as you will know and be aware of, that behavioural change is one of the hardest things to get people to do. All we can keep doing is doing the media. I think the media post this week of actually showing a lorry on fire, the video post, etc., etc. I've had conversations with people that said, well, I didn't know a battery could cause that. How did that cause that, etc., etc. So, you know, hopefully, you know, there'll be a bit of visual learning there.
Just to come to the street clean, which is brilliant, but just one thing I've noticed, we've got a lot more of that on-road parking. Is there a way that we could actually notify members, or is the parish council to say we're going to be cleaning your village or something else, so we could actually, because I have people, and I've been guilty of myself, you've parked a car and then suddenly there's been a street clean, whereas actually the benefit of it, and most people there would have moved that car out of the way and made sure that we've done a thorough cleaning, because otherwise someone else who comes past, we get the blame for it not doing this. Not actually our fault, and we could actually encourage people to do it because it's for their own benefit.
Yeah, we do have some areas that are quite problematic because of parked cars, and in those areas we do already engage with ward members, and we've had situations, particularly on housing estates, where ward members will go round and notify residents. Serco will sometimes put a note on a car to say on this particular day we're coming. It is quite a movable feat because it depends on what the weather's doing, whether it's appropriate to sweep on that day, if there's a priority area somewhere else. So it can have a little bit of wriggle room from a rigorous schedule, but we do that. And if there's particular areas in your patch what you think is problematic, let us know, and we'll get the Serco guys to engage with you prior to sweeping.
If you could do that as a matter of course with mine, because most of mine are small villages with, should we say, the old traditional rural cottage of 2 up, 2 down, and the cars parking outside. It's difficult in most areas, so it would make an advantage for all of us, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabian. Go back to Councillor Westman, but also I think every member of the Commission so far today has spoken, except for one member. And so I'm looking at the member at the moment, but you don't have to. But Councillor Westman again.
Thank you, Chairman. Fly tipping, got a brief mention. How are we doing overall? I get a kind of snapshot of what's going on in Thetford Priory Ward. And actually, I would like to think, I hope it's not wishful thinking, that things are improving, whether as a result of fixed penalty notices giving a frisson to the community, I don't know. But overall, thinking of heat maps and Serco and how are we performing overall?
We are performing well in fly tipping. There's actually, in Thetford recently, there was a £500 fine, and I have asked for some comms on that, and it was reduced to £400 because the person admitted it immediately, paid up immediately. Now, to me, £400 is a lot of money, and the more we get out to people to say that we will find you, the noise in the system then, reiterates to people that we're not going to let it go. It's a bugbear for us, and I know for you in Thetford, you do an awful lot around fly tipping. And we will continue to be. I still think we're still pretty high in Norfolk. Do you want to add anything to that? No, it's you, sorry, wrong person. She's wrong person. Do you want to add anything to that? Have you got any?
Thank you. Yeah, we are highest in Norfolk in terms of fly tipping successes and enforcement. In fact, I've just had one come through this morning when we've been sitting in here, and it's in relation to some fly tipping, not in Thetford, but it was actually an occupant of Thetford who did the fly tipping, who we've enforced against, and they've paid their fine. So we continue to work really hard in that area. I know that the Abbey has been and will continue to be an issue. But certainly if we can get the team out again. I know they're there a lot, meeting you down there to see if there's more that we can do, but it's a persistent problem, but we're doing our very best, and as I say, we enforce far more than other districts in Norfolk.
Thank you for that, and look forward to further information on that. Councillor Bowes.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, you may have touched on it, and I might have missed it, but at the same time as collecting food waste, are we actively advising people on how not to create food waste in the first place?
Yeah, we do, and we continually do that through the Norfolk Waste Partnership and Food Savvy. There's often comms on it. You may not have seen it, but there is often comms and literature, etc., regarding that. And I think it's something we all tend to say at our parish councils, our town councils, etc., that we don't want to create food waste. What we should be doing to not have as much food waste as we do have. I mean, like was said in my presentation, that we're not sure what the take-up of this will be, and in other local authorities, it's only been about 36% that have taken up the food waste caddies and putting out food waste weekly. So you could say, really, we're going around to every single house in the district and not even collecting half the food waste that's in it. I think it's disappointing for all of us, because I think we've all had the mind for ever since I've been a councillor, since 2019, that we shouldn't be creating the sort of food waste we are. And of course, in the district, we do have lots of now food fridges, etc., in all the towns where excess food is put. But no, we shouldn't be creating the food waste we are. So all I can say is, through the Norfolk Waste Partnership, we do quite a lot of work on it. But again, it's behaviour change, as Councillor Eagle was saying. Getting people to change their mindset, change their behaviour is pretty hard. What I'm hoping is, and I did say that on a radio a year or two back, is that when people get their food waste bins and they actually are putting food in it, I don't believe I waste a lot of food, but when I do, maybe I'll look at it and say, why am I throwing that out, etc. So, there might be a little bit of change there. We'll have to wait and see. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gordon.
Yes, Chairman. Well, as we've got on the food waste, you all know who I'm subbing for here, so I couldn't not ask a question about food waste, could I? But what I actually want to know is how much this new burden that's been placed on us, when we'd previously as a council decided we weren't actually going to collect food waste generally, how much is that costing the ratepayers of Breckland to bring in this service?
I know what it will cost ongoing, but I'm going to let Rihanna answer what it's cost up to date and what money we've had come in. Can you do that? not in detail. Can we get that to you in detail? Would that be better?
In terms of the overall cost of the service, clearly there will be a cost of operating a new service, trucks on the road, fuel, staff, etc., etc. But I guess the slight change in terms of how it's funded from when we came and spoke to the Commission previously is we had expected from government we would have a specific amount of money allocated to us to run the service. That's not the way it came out. It came out in the government settlement. So how much we've actually been given to do it, we don't know, because it's all wrapped up in that wider government settlement. But as you'll know, because we've been planning for this since 2024, it's been part of our budget setting process. So.
Thank you. Any further questions on any part of Helen's presentation? Councillor Eagle. Good.
Just a quick one, and again, I'll answer, I'm not sure if possible. I noticed it was very good salary sacrifice for officers. I wondered if it's legally possible or able to do it, so we could actually offer that to members as well, to encourage for environmental projects and other points.
We can check, but I'm pretty sure it's not possible. But let me follow up. I'll come back to you.
Yeah, I know. That's fine. Just to say, I agree. We've got a huge problem with the food waste, because obviously that behavioural thing, and particularly for those of the older generation, some are in this room and not, we were discouraged from actually putting our food waste separate, because once per time, if you're in a village, rural village, there was a swill bin or something else and you were encouraged to feed it, that was considered a complete disaster for should we say, livestock farming, foot and mouth, and other disease precautions. So how we've now got that massive challenge. I'm just interested in how you're actually going to try and do that to get people from saying, particularly hitting and bearing in mind, we are an elderly population in Breckland, that we've perhaps spent the last nearly 40 odd years now saying to people, you know, get rid of the waste. It's a danger to farming, danger to rural, danger to health. And now we're asking them to actually separate it and put it out again. So I just wondered how we're going to try and deal with that and make sure that people are more conscious of where reducing, as Councillor Bowser said, actually the waste point, but when they come to put that waste in it, and actually encouraging them to say it's a viable and going to something useful.
Again, thank you for that question, but again, it's going to be down to individual choice. We can only, as a council, advise people, encourage them, do comms, etc. on it. Other than that, people are individuals. They will choose what they want to do, but we will continue through all of us and members. I ask you as members really to make sure you get as many people on board for this service as possible, because looking at the sustainability of it, to have a lorry that's going around to every single house in a village and only collecting maybe 40% of the caddies and then taking it to Attleborough, part of me feels that that's quite nonsensical. I'm not sure what the advantage is of that, but we are, by government, we have got to do this. Therefore, we don't have any choice. So, the more that do it, probably will be the better. But it's showing throughout the country that 40% would be a really good take up. Sorry, I should have.
You're trying to get the prize for the most questions asked, aren't you, Fabian? Thank you. No. Not really. No. Go on, go for it, Fabian.
I was a bit amazed that we said there's a planning delay for the development of the site in Attleborough. Considering we are the local planning authority, surely we should know that you would need to have some ecological plans or something drawn up. And it just surprises me, and I think it's going to surprise our residents as well, that we weren't up to speed and to be aware of what we needed.
Thank you. That wasn't for the site at Attleborough. That was actually for the extension of the yard at Watton, where Circo is. So it didn't have anything to do with the depot at Attleborough. It was at Watton. But I do agree, we ought to have been aware that certain surveys, etc., needed to be done. Whether there was anything over and above the norm, I don't know.
Yeah, so there was a couple of elements to it. One, the development of a design that was suitable in terms of the vehicles and access around the site. For anyone that knows Watton Depot, it's not just used for waste collection, it's also got the prison escort service there as well. So there was some slight delays in design stuff. There was also ecological surveys that were undertaken that required further extensive looks because of the potential presence of newts, which has been overcome. And and works are commencing.
Last one leads to this as well. We've been informed and known that this was coming for 2 years. Now, at the same time, your portfolio is enforcement as well. Now, most of us, some of us here, have got business experience. We know we're given no exemption when there's been a lead-in for a rule to be enforced. So how does this balance to yourselves as a portfolio that you're not ready for the food waste collection after having 2 years preparation, and you're beginning to sound like some Belgian farmers avoiding EU rules? Yet we're then enforcing businesses and saying you've had 2 years or more preparation to come into rules. It does sound like there's a rule for us and how we're going to behave and how we got to. And I'm just wondering how you're going to deal with that on the comms, because I'm speaking as business, and probably several other people have been here. We've had inspections, and that has been said to me, you've been told about this, you should have been ready and had it ready. So I just wondered why we're not doing what we preach.
Thank you. I think the difference is there is A, we're not enforcing with businesses, and B, businesses are slightly different in that they've got to order a service. We have to provide a service, and as I showed in all the slides, the elements of that service are incredibly complex, things that are out of our control. Those lorries were ordered in absolute good time, on time. We were let down by the manufacturer along with other people. So I think it's actually two different things, but I do take on board that, you know, that sometimes seems there's one rule for one and one rule for the other. But do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so just in terms of the enforcement against businesses that don't comply with the legislation, that's the Environment Agency. They've been allocated as the enforcing authority. In terms of the need to start up a service, engagement with DEFRA has been going on for such a long time, and it's fair to say that the simpler recycling legislation took a long time to go through the process. It was very difficult for local authorities, and you know, we're not alone with having not started on the 1st of April, for local authorities to be able to make decisions and budget, acknowledge what budgets might need to be in place without the information from government, which was delayed through a number of months and actually years. So we've engaged with DEFRA all the way through, as have other local authorities. The supply chain issue was something that we all lobbied government about and said this is going to be a real problem, given the number of authorities that have to order trucks, bins, all at the same time. We were reassured that there was confidence in the market and the market would be able to respond. The same with recruitment, and it hasn't. So I guess the message is, as a district council, we started planning very early. We pressed the button as soon as we physically could. It's in the hands of the delivery companies, the manufacturers, etc. I think there's also fair to say since then there's been other events that have delayed some other elements of it. We're still on time in terms of delivery of our caddies, etc. But that's caused some challenges in terms of the procurement process with cost of fuel, getting the bins to the UK, etc., etc. So it's not been one single thing that's delayed it, it's been multiple things. But we've written to DEFRA as part of the Norfolk Waste Partnership numerous times, as have all local authorities up and down the country in the same situation.
Councillor Bambridge, I'll probably make that the last question on this
Well, it
item
was
of the
just a
agenda.
comment, Chairman. I sit here as a member of the older community of Breckland, and we are always very happy to advise younger members of the community on new ways of doing things and new rules that come in. So there needn't be any fear there.
Thank you, Gordon. I'm sure your wisdom will be much appreciated by the whole community. If no one else any other questions, I've just got one sort of quick question. On the deposit return scheme, waiting further information. I can remember the days, obviously, of going around and finding bottles and taking them back and getting money back on them. So I'm one of the slightly less old generation. When do you think that information will be forthcoming from government or the various departments?
That's a really good question. Originally, there was talk in the earlier days of that coming into play in 2026. We believe it could be October 2028, but we haven't got any particular details on it at the moment.
Thank you. I'm not saving up any sort of bottles. I remember the Corona van and stuff and going around looking in ditches as a kid as well. If there are no more questions from the Commission to Helen and her team, can I thank Helen and the team for fielding the wide range of questions. It's a lot of interest in these different areas of the portfolio impact on residents. In particular, I know that we, as members, we will be particularly looking forward to the responses that you promised to give us, and hopefully all those will go back. Perhaps they could go back on block to Ruth and to the members here, and also where we promised that we will actually update all members of the council, not just the Commission. And we look forward also, particularly, I think, to the communications activity coming out for members, and particularly for the public and residents about the food waste. So we look forward to that, and we'll obviously support and encourage information around that. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, members. We're now going to be moving on, slight change of scenery at the moment. We're moving on to item 8, well, people change places or move around, to the NR19 Dereham Task Force, to receive an update on the progress of the task force. And we welcome the Deputy Chief Executive, Rob Walker, to give an update on the NR19 task force. Members will, I'm sure, have read the 4 different documents that have come out about the meetings that have been held about the task force. And I know this will be helpful for members in other parts of Breckland, not just Dereham, although this is focused on Dereham. I'm also conscious that while this is focused around NR19, there are obviously related issues with national stuff coming out, things like government action on vape shops and legislation, what they've called dodgy high street shops, some of which proliferate in town centres, not just in Norfolk but elsewhere. And all, so we're looking at things like serious organised crime, but also the local implementation. I went to the launch of the alcohol partnership on Friday. That was about underage drinking. So there is all part of the street scene, literally, that affects residents and our perception and what actually happens out there. So I now give the floor over to Rob Walker. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I notice my colleagues have run for the hill, so I'll do my best to field this single-handedly. Thanks, Rihanna, sticking with me just in case. The trust they have in me, Chairman, is amazing. Let's hope I can live up to it. So I'm conscious there are only 3 Dereham members in the room, so I think it's important to give a bit of context for perhaps those councillors that are less aware of what the Dereham Task Force is and what we're trying to do. So I'm conscious you've had the terms of reference. I'm conscious you've had copies of the statements that are issued on the back of every task force meeting. So there's a bit of insight to what the task force is. But just for a bit more context, several months ago, at the end of last year, there was a public meeting held in Dereham where about 200 people attended, where they questioned myself, the leader, Steve James, plus the police were there, and very other interested parties. And there was a concern in the local community about some of the behaviours they were seeing in the marketplace and in the town centre among certain parts of the population. And they were clearly attributing some of those behaviours and some of those people to people who were being housed by local authorities in temporary and emergency accommodation. And I think when you go to a public meeting like that with 200 people who are very politely but very appropriately challenging and questioning what you're doing, I think it's appropriate that as an authority we listen to that and we're doing something about it. So on the back of that meeting, the leader asked me to establish a task force and to drive forward some improvements on behalf of this authority and the partner authorities in Durham. So that's what we've done. So the task force is essentially a group of partners working together to make improvements. So around the table, we've got the police, we've got Breckland, we've got Norfolk County Council, we've got DWP, we've got the Citizens Advice team, and we've also got 3 community representatives who were asked to put forward nominations. So we wanted to get some of the people from that room who were holding us to account to sit on the task force and be part of the solution and sort of see what we were trying to do. So we're very fortunate that 3 members of the community came forward and sit with us on the task force. We struggled to get a business representative, but that's something we're continuing to work on. So as a range of partners, we're coming into a room to try and make improvements. It's an officer environment, it's not a political environment, so it's myself and senior officers from those partnerships. I chair the meetings. The vice chair is the clerk of Durham Town Council, just to try and show it is a partnership approach. It isn't just a Breckland Council initiative. It's important, though, that we have political oversight as well. It's all well and good that we as officers get together and do this work, but it's important that we have accountability to those of you who are elected. So alongside the task force is something that's called, in very local government speak, the Political Oversight Group, which is essentially all the politicians from Durham, be it the Town Council, be it Breckland or be it Norfolk, coming into a room, and they meet every week after a task force meeting, and they're able to challenge me and my colleagues about what we're doing, what we're proposing, and give us a sense of political direction on some of the stuff they'd like to see us pick up. So although the task force is an officer group, it does have clear political oversight from all 3 tiers of local government in Durham. It's still early days. We're 3 meetings in, so it's still early days, but I think we're making good progress. A lot of the work we had to do at the start was work with our community members and to address some of their concerns and some of their challenges and some of their understanding, and to listen to what their frustrations were and what they'd like to know. So a lot of the early sessions were about how we can be better at communicating, how we can be better at telling people what's going on, how we can be better at explaining the complexities of how you place somebody in temporary accommodation, what levels of support they do and don't get, etc. So a lot of the early meetings were about us being better as the public sector, talking to members of the community about how the system works and what we're trying to do, and listen to how we could get better at telling the story. So I think we've all got together as one task force where now I can safely say that the community representatives have a far greater understanding of what we're trying to do and are supportive of what we're trying to do, and are helping us in communicating that message back out on social media or through public meetings, etc., that happen within Durham. So just to quickly run through some of the early things we've been focusing on to give you an idea. So a lot of the attention in Durham was on a particular premise. It was on something called the NR19 Hotel. So it's a hotel / HMO at the top end of the marketplace, for those who don't know Durham so well. And it's a site that's been routinely used for housing people under emergency accommodation and temporary accommodation sort of purposes. It wasn't just used by Breckland Council, it was used by councils from across Norfolk and from across Suffolk. And that was leading to some of the problems that were being experienced. So one of the early successes of the task force and our approach at Breckland is we've reduced the amount of placements that are being made in that property by Breckland. So we're placing less people in there than we have done previously. And through the work that Steve James has done with the support of the leader, we've also challenged our counterparts, our colleagues across Norfolk and Suffolk, because placements were made from East Suffolk, so the lowest off sort of Woodbridge area. We've asked them to stop using or reduce how much they use NR19 as well. So I can confidently say that it's used far less by other authorities than it was done previously. And it is used far less by us than it was done previously. Using nightly paid B&B accommodation isn't a desired route for us as a housing authority. We prefer more stable, secure accommodation. It's it's more affordable, it's better value for money, and it's a better outcome from the people that we're placing in need. The people we are placing in NR19 are single males, so we don't place women in NR19, we don't place families in NR19, so we are conscious of when you're putting multiple households into a single premise that you've got to be conscious of the different circumstances that those people have, and you have to be sensitive to that. So that no longer happens. So yeah, in terms of addressing NR19, there's far less noise in the system about NR19. There's far less concern about it. I'm not saying it's gone away entirely, because it hasn't, but that's largely down to our reduced use of that premise. How have we reduced the use? Thanks to you and to your other members on the council. £9 million being invested by Breckland in buying accommodation across the district, or leasing accommodation across the district for use in emergency accommodation. A chunk of that is in Durham, some of it's elsewhere in Thetford and in our other towns, but we are more than ever before using accommodation that we own or have the leasehold to house people in an emergency accommodation situations. That means our number of people in nightly paid temporary accommodation at the height of what I call the housing crisis, which was experienced by many local authorities. You were looking at having 50 plus households in nightly paid accommodation across Breckland. Now that's routinely down to 20 and less. So we've made significant progress thanks to the great work of our housing team, and we're starting to see the bearing the fruits of that hard work in Durham as well as in other towns. Other bits you'll be aware of: a new PSPO, Public Space Protection Orders, been introduced in Durham to control behaviours such as street drinking and other antisocial behaviours that might happen in the town centre. Other towns that you'll be aware of already have this in place. So that's there to give us a tool that we can use to control certain behaviours. Clearly it's for the police, but also for our street wardens where appropriate to police and to sort of implement that PSPO, but it required us to set it up and get it launched in the first place. We're also looking at using something called Article 4, which is a planning tool which can limit and control the sort of conversion of properties into houses of multiple occupation. We're in the evidence gathering stage of that to see what policies we can put in place to try and control the amount of property conversions that are taking place, and therefore control some of the private sector type of accommodation that needs addressing. We've had an early success in terms of lobbying by ourselves and other town council members on the task force for youth provision and the continuing support for a youth club in Durham, and for providing additional youth activity as well. We're currently in conversation with the town council, and we've also made an approach to the Police and Crime Commissioner to extend the provision of street wardens within Durham. We haven't secured that. That's an ongoing conversation. They're already in Durham. This is about securing them for the longer term and securing more hours of their time within Durham. I'm currently doing my best lobbying the Town Council and the Police and Crime Commissioner to take a partnership approach to funding that initiative. So hopefully we'll have some good news soon about extending the street warden presence within Durham. And we're using the success of that approach in Thetford, where the local town council is extremely positive about the impact that that's had, and we're trying to do something similar in Durham. Our housing colleagues in the private sector housing team under Ellen Spencer's stewardship undertaking targeted enforcement and inspections regarding private sector housing challenges within the town centre. They've focused on the marketplace, they've focused on Norwich Street, they've focused on Quebec Street. They've got a real targeted approach and are having some success already in terms of changing and challenging some of the behaviours around private sector accommodation. It may be something, Chairman, you might want to hear more about in the future, but that team is really, really starting to make progress in enforcing better quality accommodation and safer accommodation for people living within Dereham. The policing presence has increased. There's a new beat manager for the marketplace and for the town centre. I think it's noticeably their presence has increased, and they're publicising some of the recent successes they've had in terms of community protection orders and sort of controlling some of the people who are able to access the town centre. So they've noticeably increased the visibility of their patrols and their presence, and also how they're communicating their messages on social media. So I think we're starting. We're not there yet, Chairman. We're at the start of the journey, but I think we're seeing the early seeds of success in terms of some of the activities and some of the progress we're being made. Just to finish, at the last, and then more than happy to take any questions or comments. At the last task force meeting, we agreed a new series of actions and focus. So we're arranging for a multi-agency team to go out and visit all the problem sites within the town centre within Dereham. So there are certain problem sites where there are challenges around rough sleeping, certain antisocial behaviour situations going on that are sort of perpetual issues that are challenging and difficult to solve. So we're arranging for the police in coordination with the county council, ourselves and the town council to go out and visit those sites and look at any ways we can sort of mitigate those risks and deal with those risks, be it whether it's the architectural liaison officer from the police looking at how we can design out crime, whether it's about how we use some of our resource about enforcement. It's just looking out to key sites within the town that you will all know, or the Dereham members will know to be problem sites, and how we address that. So we're taking a bit of a stick approach in that sense of let's make it uncomfortable for people to do the wrong things and display behaviours that we don't like. But alongside that, we also have vulnerable people who are in need. So we need to support the people who are in need, as well as having a sort of tough stance on unacceptable behaviour. So we're talking to the local faith-based community, we're talking to the local voluntary community sector about some of the support that they're providing in kind to support some of the people who are in need within Dereham, whether that's providing mentoring, whether that's providing counselling, whether that's providing food and rations, and so to speak. So we're working with them to look at and see how we can strengthen that offer and make sure that the people who need it are accessing that offer readily. So there's a bit of a stick and carrot approach. If you're vulnerable and in need of help, we'll be there to help you. But if you behave wrongly and you're doing something that we don't like, we will address that as well. So there's a bit of a stick and carrot approach suggested. Last couple of things. I think we were all pleased to see the success of Dino Day over half term. The feedback we've had from local businesses is that they see people going into their businesses that they've not seen before or not seen for a while. So it's obviously driven footfall into the town centre. We're also found that it also dispersed and made sure that some of the bad behaviours that we perhaps experiencing weren't present on that day, because it was actually driven to be a positive experience. So the task force have challenged me to go away and look at how we could deliver a programme of positive activities in Dereham over the summer holidays and such like. So to try and create a different view of the town centre, a different dynamic, different people coming in, and then make it unacceptable for the negative behaviours to occur. And lastly, I think we're going to take the opportunity, thanks to the Town Council, to engage with them around the work they're doing on the skate park and doing some youth engagement with them and trying to attract some positive engagement with the young people. So it's still early days, Chairman. We're 3 meetings in, a few months in. There are some challenges to meet. They're not challenges that are alone to Dereham. Some of these challenges have experienced in other towns within Breckland and certainly across the country. But we've come together as a range of partners. We've involved the community, and we're all on the same page and moving forward in the same direction to try and address some of these challenges. What I would say is all these challenges can't be attributed just to people in temporary accommodation and emergency accommodation. That's not true. If you talk to the police and our colleagues, some of these behaviours are people who are long-standing residents of Dereham. It's not just people who are in emergency accommodation in need. So often the attention is focused on NR19 and the hotel. The issue is more complicated and broader than that. and we're acknowledging that we have a bigger issue to deal with rather than just a single premise. But that's where we are on the task force, Chairman, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Rob Walker? Gordon.
Thank you, Chairman. I have two, and they are quite different. And I hope you'll forgive me that I don't know too much about this situation, except as a person who comes into Dereham to shop from time to time. The first one is just picking up on something you said. You used the term in the beginning of your presentation, far less, quite a lot. We're using it far less. Other people are using it far less. There are far less people in that establishment. Now, that is an establishment that has provided a need, and I accept the fact there might have been various things wrong with that or not nice with it in the beginning. But how has, and this is my first question, how has the use of that facility far less affected both the business and the people who own it, and how has it affected the lack of beds for a particular type of people in Dereham? And then I'll ask the second question, if that's fine.
Thank you, Chairman. To give you a bit of context to what far less means, so it varies on any given day, Councillor Banbridge, but we're placing sometimes one household in there, sometimes 5. It's at that sort of level is the numbers of people we're putting in. Norfolk County Council are also housing households within 19. The other authorities are no longer using the premise. So that just gives you some indication of how it's been used. I think you ask a really important question. So it's a lot emptier than it was before. So what's the impact of that? Well, one, some work's been done on that premise at the moment. So part of the building isn't available anyway. So that mitigates the risk for the provider. But I think some things we've got to be conscious of is if we're using it less, what will the owner's intention be in terms of who uses the spaces that have been vacated? Because across the county, the local authorities are trying to use B&B and nightly paid accommodation a lot less, and other local authorities have also invested in their own infrastructure. That means that a demand that was going in a certain direction is no longer going there, and that will present challenges to the owners of said premises. And I think we need to engage with them and make sure how they then fill those spaces is done in a positive and a carefully thought out way. At the moment, there's more empty rooms than there were previously, in simple terms.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for that. That's good. I think as councillors, we probably ought to be kept aware of that situation as it develops over time. And the second question, really, as somebody, I don't actually live in Dereham. When this started up, there was a great deal in social media and in general chit-chat around the place of various fears that people in the community had. And I just wondered how the levels of the realisation of those fears developed. I mean, how accurate were they? Was it worse than we were led to believe, or better? And I appreciate what you've said about how actions you've taken to improve it as it goes on. I'm just wondering to get a feeling of what it was like right in the beginning.
I think the fears were legitimate from the people who attended that meeting. I think it's important that we listen and hear. We'll have a professional view, but there were 200 people in that room with a strongly held view of what was happening within their town, and it's important that we heard that. I think their concerns were legitimate in terms of some of the behaviours they were seeing in the town centre by certain individuals and certain antisocial behaviour activity that they were witnessing. I think they were genuine and legitimate concerns. My only difference of opinion to what I heard was I wouldn't attribute all those behaviours to people who were living in temporary accommodation or a particular property. Some of those issues, and we have the evidence, I can't go into specifics for obvious reasons, were from people who have been long known to our constabulary colleagues and have been long-term residents of Dereham. It wasn't just people who had been moved into the town into emergency accommodation. That is not me saying some of the problems didn't come from those people, because they did. As you'll appreciate, people who are housed in temporary and emergency accommodation are obviously experiencing challenges in their lives for a variety of different reasons, and sometimes that can lead to behaviours that need to be managed and controlled. So the concerns were legitimate and were fair. I don't think we could just attribute them to one particular premise. I think it was more complicated that and across a range of different premises. But yes, I think it was a legitimate concern. I think one of the things I've been pleased with the task force is one of the individuals who was the strong vocal leader on social media, who convened the meeting in Durham on behalf of the community, has really has joined the task force as a member of the task force. He's a key advocate and a key stakeholder within the local community, and we're working really well with him. And I think he's enjoying being a part of the process. So one, he can better understand it, but also he can help us allay some of the fears in the local community and provide some reassurance where they're doing the right things, as well as still holding to his account when he thinks we can do better, because that's the role of the community and the task force, is to make sure we do the best thing. So the short answer, Gordon, is there were legitimate concerns, but why they were being presented was perhaps more complex than people thought, and we need to do a better job of explaining how complex it is.
Thank you. Any further questions to Rob? Peter?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's not really a question, Rob, because you have touched on it. Obviously, before the problem with the temporary accommodation raised its head with residents in Durham, there was obviously antisocial behaviour. There is across the town, every town in Norfolk, across the country, and even when I was back in policing, that was always a problem. It always will be a problem. It's just distinguishing what is the, you know, like you said, with the temporary housing residents, as well as everybody else who have troubles in their lives, are not parental controlled. Younger people, unfortunately, minority, I must say, are causing antisocial behaviour anyway, and the police have to. That has to be evidenced as well before the police can act. That is a big, strong point where people on social media complained early doors before the task force was brought together. But police have to act on evidence, and when it's not given by the public, if it's no good moaning on and complaining on social media, they must report these issues with evidence. You know, so it's a bit of a tough task for you, really, to distinguish what you can do and what you can't do with that sort of thing. So you know, but what you have done as a council is absolutely brilliant to bring it to the attention of everybody. Because as the chairman knows, I'm a big supporter of Durham financially. And yeah, so, and just thinking about the summer activities as well, I think we'll get a little bit jealous in our other market towns if we don't do it. So if you are looking at a programme, I'd like to see it spread across to Swaffham in particular. So I do have apart from Swaffham, we do have that big community around Swaffham who look for entertainment in the summertime.
Thank you, Chairman. The joy of working in Breckland is you keep one town happy and four unhappy at every given moment in time. I'm sure the other towns are jealous of the amazing work we've done around heritage in Swaffham. So, I take the point, Councillor Wilkinson, that I think we'll look at what programmes we can deliver across all of our market towns. It's just been this, in this context of this agenda item, there's been a specific ask of the task force to see what we can do in Durham. Coming back to the temporary accommodation point, I think one of the biggest and most important early wins was under the sort of leadership of the leader of the council and through Steve James, the director, is to reduce the use by other local authorities of Durham as a place to house people in temporary accommodation. That was a very early win and was something quickly picked up and addressed. And I think that's had a real direct impact as well. There's an obligation for those authorities to tell us within 28 days that they've done that placement. But the problem is, if you're not hearing up front and in advance and you're hearing a month after, it's challenging because we can't then deal with the consequences of those placements. And clearly, when multiple local authorities are placing people into one building, you want that to be as coordinated and as sensible in the approach as possible to make sure you know, the right people are being placed alongside each other, for example. So one of the big successes was the current use is just Norfolk County Council. It's in Norfolk, so that's a legitimate use, and ourselves, and thankfully the other authorities placing elsewhere within their patch, and I think that was one of the early wins we had.
Councillor Westman.
Not sure if I was on transmit then, but okay.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, that's a really important question. So the first couple of meetings of the task force were understand where we are and find out why we've found ourselves in the position we are and deal with the urgent things that need to be addressed. We're now flipping to take on the challenge you've just described on how do we get proactive, how do we promote positive activity within Durham and stop this, you know, happening in the future again. So we had to sort of take stock, understand where we are, and then go, right, we've deal with that, and then we can move forward and stop this happening again. One bit is we control the placements that are being made in, as I've just discussed in part. So we have a better understanding of who's been placed where, why, and for how long. So with just ourselves and Norfolk County Council placing in certain key premises, and that brings that under control and a better knowledge being shared. We're also meeting on a county-wide basis now with all the directors of housing to have proactive conversations about placement rather than reactive conversations to stop that bubbling up. We make sure that we have the appropriate levels of support in place for those, the vulnerable people that we're supporting. So those people need to be moved as quickly or supported to move as quickly as possible into permanent accommodation. They will need help with debt, with substance abuse issues, with domestic violence issues in certain cases. So the work that we're doing down at the place called The Link in Durham, where we provide a multi-agency support around accessing services, is crucial. As I said earlier, the faith-based community and the voluntary community sector play an integral role in providing informal support. Sometimes the institutions are intimidating to people in this situation, and the voluntary and community sector can provide support, so it's making sure we support those individuals. But it's also, so those are the positive things. There is also for me an element around being firm in how you deal with negative behaviours as well. So for me, there's always a balance with, we won't accept poor behaviours, we will police and govern appropriately, and balance that again against making sure people get the support they will do. So the summary of how to pick up your question is better information sharing in advance, better understanding and control over what people are being placed where, stronger policing and presence in terms of how we're dealing with the behaviours that we're seeing. And I think the police recently have demonstrated that, particularly through their social media. I think we also need to be better at communicating. Sometimes we're not very good at explaining how the housing system works, how somebody ends up in temporary accommodation and how it works, or what we can do regarding enforcement. So one of the things we've got at the moment is there is a property within the town that is a property that we need to take enforcement action again. We need to go through the court system to get that enforcement action to take place. That is a long and delayed process because of the delays within the judicial system. People just see that on the street as you're not doing anything. We've done everything we can do to get it to a certain point and now require a sort of judicial review of that process. So we're waiting for that. We need to be better at communicating as well so people can understand we are doing things and understand how the process would work. So for me, the prevention and coordination bit, the tough on the negative behaviours, but also better at how we communicate with our local community so they understand what we're doing.
Thank you. Any further questions for Rob Walker? No. Thank you. Thank you very much, Rob, for the presentation. Obviously, speaking as a DERA member, I've noticed an increased activity of street wardens and police and so forth, and I look forward to further reports in the political oversight group and elsewhere, particularly, I think, as Peter Wilson referred to, around evidence and data, so that there's two things going on in my perception. One is the perception that people have about what is or isn't happening, and then where we're showing that we have actually increased resources in a particular area, we are dealing with a particular issue, and where we're also showing, if you like, a geographical distribution of things that aren't focused on NR19, they're actually issues that have been potentially long-standing in and around the ward, or people moving in and so forth. So it's a long journey, but will be worthwhile in the end. We have given a commitment. I've given a commitment that we will actually have reports upcoming back here. This is the first one today, and there will be obviously a future discussion here at Scrutiny. It's important that we have a sort of a transparent public scrutiny, as well as the other two bodies that are working, the public oversight and the action group. So I thank Rob for coming along and explaining everything that's happened so clearly, and also giving us positive news and being realistic at the same time. Thank you. Thank you very much, members. We now have item 9 on the agenda, which is our Q4 performance and projects report. Consider our council position in relation to corporate performance, and I'd like to welcome Councillor Alison Webb today, invite them to update the Commission. I think it's just yourself today, Alison. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and Councillor Hewitt sends his apologies, so you've got me for both items today. Okay, so I'm pleased to report to the committee today the Q4 performance and project report. Just as a reminder, this report covers the period between January to March 2026. You'll notice that finance is not included in this report, so Phil's not here, as it will be presented separately following the end of the financial year. A summary for performance and then projects is as follows. In Q4 for performance, the majority of our key performance indicators are at or near target. Firstly, I want to touch on leisure participation within the district. The Council recognises the importance of a strong leisure offering within Breckland, as seen by its investment in this area. It is therefore important to highlight the levels of participation we are seeing at our leisure sites across the district. The past year has been the strongest performing year since the pandemic, with over 750,000 entries to our leisure sites. Without the context of the pandemic, which saw reduced rates of use in the district, this is our third strongest year since we started capturing this indicator in 2014-2015. The second area I just want to draw members' attention to relates to standards complaint dealt with in timescale. As members will recall, we changed this indicator in the last 18 months to being reported half-yearly, as reporting it quarterly meant that missing even just one deadline would result in the indicator being flagged as underperforming. Members will note that the indicator has been flagged again in this report, so I want to take a brief moment to give you some context. Of the 15 cases the Council received and are obligated to investigate, 3 exceeded the 90-day limit. However, to put it into context, the important context of this is that 2 of these cases required external investigation, which therefore required longer time. Unfortunately, the Council does not have the ability to change the 90-day time limit in this context, which has therefore contributed to the indicator underperforming in Q4. You'll notice, I will say this bit without reading this because I asked, there was 3 that actually exceeded the 90-day limit, and I've asked for further information about the one that didn't because I'm quite interested why. So I'm now going to hand over to Councillor Hewitt's area. This report covers the position of the Council's high priority projects at the end of Q4. There were 11 projects and one programme considered to be high priority during this time. Overall, these projects are progressing well and will create a number of benefits and efficiencies across a range of different areas. You will note within the appendices that the 2 projects are currently tracking as amber. The first being the Attleborough Leisure Project. Work on site did progress through Q4 with refurbished works to the sports hall now complete. The next phase is to begin construction of the new fitness suite, which is slightly behind schedule, however, due to commence in the coming weeks. The second project tracking as amber is the Digital Creative Media Centre in Watton, as the design phase is still ongoing. Aside from these 2 projects, the rest of the programme were tracking green. Since this report was presented to Cabinet in May, I am pleased to report a key milestone has been reached in the Thetford Campus project. Following an in-depth review of tender responses, we are now in the position to award the contract for architectural services. This will see the commencement of necessary site surveys and design work, marking a significant step in bringing to life our ambition of providing access to further education, which will improve opportunities and life outcomes for young people in our district. I will be pleased to bring forward further updates on the Thetford campus in due course. This is just one of the important projects this council is committed to delivering, and that's from Councillor Hewitt. So thank you for that, and I'm quite happy to take any questions on the report, and I've got Rob with me if there's any complicated ones. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alison, for that very succinct but comprehensive presentation. Any questions for Alison, please, members? No questions? All right, so very clear. I'm going to ask a couple of questions. That's all right with you, Alison? On 3.2, percentage of homeless prevention cases where homeless sex are prevented. You've said there, the last line, as a result, the council will seek to change this target in Q1 to better reflect its current service delivery. I wonder what you're going to change the target to.
Thanks for your question, Chairman. So effectively, we review and re-benchmark our targets each year just to make sure that they're reflective of current service delivery. That's an indicator where we've overperformed probably across the last year. So what we just need to do is recalibrate it to better reflect sort of how we can deliver that. It's a lowish target compared to where we're performing on average now. So as part of a wider review, that's just one which we'll be looking to retarget for Q1.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully that question's also given a little bit of time for any members to think of any questions. But if not, on the performance quarter table under commercial property, you've got target and it just says annual target. So I didn't know if there's an annual estimation of what you hope to get in terms of net rental income, if there's a projected target there or not.
So I do believe we exceeded the target, but in terms of the numerical number, I'll send that out afterwards because I believe that was in this, but I believe we did exceed it.
Pardon, sorry, project highlight summary, car park transfers. I know obviously that's heads of terms have been agreed, etc. In terms of the CCTV, I think that's still being responsibility of Breckland, and I was wondering where that's going to be attributed sort of now going forward in terms of the cost of running that. Is that recharged to the towns, but the operational oversight of that still remaining currently with Breckland? Thank you.
Right.
Do you want me to?
Yeah, you can.
I think that's to be determined in the individual negotiations with each town council chairman. So I'm not aware of the specific details of the negotiations, but I know each of them has nuances. Some have more coverage than others in terms of CCDV. Some have EV charging points. I know the one in Attleborough has the link to the leisure centre as well. So I think it's picked up in individual negotiations with the town councils. But if there's anything specific you want clarity on, I'm sure the team will be able to update you.
Thank you very much, Rob. Any questions for Alison? Right. No further questions for you, Alison. So thank you very much for the team. We look forward to your next appearance here. We've now dealt with item 9. Under item 10, which is the outside body feedback. We'd like to obviously come on to Councillor Bambridge in a minute. We've had apologies from Councillor Kyberg, who had hoped to be here today, and he is awaiting further appointments to the Area Museums Committee by the Norfolk County Council. We're sending further updates in. I would like to thank Councillor Bambridge, who's with us today, for his comprehensive report on the Norfolk Rivers Internal Drainage Board, which he's updated all members of the council. And Gordon has said in advance of this meeting he's happy to answer any questions that members may have on it. So flow the floor open to members and see if there's anything you wish to highlight, particularly Gordon. Thank you.
Most members in their wards, from time to time. So I'm always happy to talk to people, and quite frequently members do ring me sort of in between with bits and pieces. Norfolk itself is and Breckland is quite well served. Yeah, I didn't turn it off. Breckland is quite well served with methods of controlling flooding, with the drainage boards, with the Norfolk Flooding Alliance, and Water Resource East, and so on. All of those things keep an eye on our waters. But what I think I did say in the report, and anybody who ever deals with the Environment Agency should push this forward, please do make sure that they give up the rivers to different management. The demaining of main rivers is the key to stopping flooding in many of our rural villages, because since the Environment Agency took over in the mid-1990s, they have forgotten how to spell maintenance.
Thank you very much. We pay tribute to your sort of dedication, as I know, for many years, even preceding me in terms of the internal drainage board. So you're also a acknowledged expert locally. Thank you very much. Any further items on this? David Wickerson.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd just like to remind members, and I would ask them to think about this in their own own part of Breckland, the fact that the Hammonds Educational Trust, which I chair, as you know, recently gave a grant to the Swaffham Cultural Consortium for activities in the last year of a 3-year project that we have been working on in Swaffham. And that grant went towards young people's involvement in events and activities during the last year of the programme. So apart from helping individuals, which we do obviously under the age of 21, we can obviously provide grants to groups who are involving young people in activities in their particular established area. So again, I would encourage members, if they have something going on, good examples, I suppose, are the fact that we gave a grant to Thetford Football Club, for example, We gave a grant to Swaffham Football Club, the junior versions of that, Swaffham Rugby Club. So it's not just the individual the student, for example, who needs some help with university costs, which we do, where we can. It's also involving, we can give grants to groups who have youth activities under their banner, so to speak. Just a reminder, really, that we're there to help where we can. We will invite applications along those lines, in addition to encouraging young people themselves through the members, if they have a financial difficulty in terms of getting to university or doing apprenticeships is another good example, that we're there to help wherever we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's good to hear about the good work of the trust, and perhaps you could in the near future send something to Ruth here, or so something goes out to all members so that they're all aware of that. I'm sure you've done that before, but a refresh would be very helpful. Thank you very much. If any further outside bodies reports? No, thank you very much. We now come on to item 11, which is the work programme, which is attached, and that takes us up to, it covers up to July, September, October, December and January. So we're sort of ploughing through the year there. One of the things we're asked to agree at the Commission is any additions, deletions or amendments to the programme is appropriate. I would like to propose a future item under the heading of Anglian Water performance in Dereham, May 2026, not related just to that particular date. Both as a local member and resident, but also had a formal request from Dereham Councillor Alison Webb for us to consider this, and I would like the Commission's approval to add Anglian Water's attendance here at a future meeting where we can discuss a number of issues. And these may be, we can send these round, but the issues we were thinking of would be communication, investment in the infrastructure, quality of work, vulnerable residents and homes, mitigating immediate loss and sort of bottled water, and particularly compensation to residents and businesses. If members think there are any other areas that need to be explored, they can be done. But obviously, would like members' approval. Though this particular outage we had isn't as bad as some in other parts of the country under different companies, I fear to say that having experienced this burst water main several times over the last few years in the same area, it may well be happening again. And I know that I think Councillor Webb has already written to the Chief Executive and we can take that up. So I'll take your question. If are members happy to agree that as a future programme, and I would suggest to give them time to respond, that we have them, ask them to come at the September meeting. Have I got your agreement?
Yes, Chairman, you have got my agreement. I think it's a good idea to have Anglia Water along, and I appreciate it may not have the urgency of burst water mains, which directly affect people in their homes, but we certainly need to be challenging Anglia Water on the releasing of grey water and polluted water into our rivers. They have, I think, recently received permission from the government to release grey water at least 2 pumping stations in or near the Dereham area, and they ought to be releasing clean water. More expensive, I know, take more time, I know, but we should be pressing them on it.
Thank you very much. That's helpful to add that on. Can I just confirm that, can I have a show of hands of members are happy for that to go on the programme? Thank you very much. Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Chairman. Please can I add another question to your list of questions for Anglia Water? When the water was turned on, it was turned on at such a force that it actually broke the pipes in some of the residents in Dereham's homes which have flooded their kitchen, and I've had 2 or 3 people come back, had to get the plumber in, and they're sending their bill into Anglian Water. But it's this sort of thing which needs to be looked at. Lessons learned need to be took forward, and everything needs to be make sure that it never happens again as bad as it was in Dereham in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alison. I think what I would propose to do is also for members who are here today, for the Commission and members who aren't, I'll send around the criteria of the list there and see if anyone wants to add to it before we issue that invitation. But we've got the broad outlines there. We've got Alison's suggestion. There's a particular operational issue, but also the other issue which all water companies seem to be involved with in terms of what they do with rivers, lakes, beaches, etc. But obviously we're confined to this particular issue. So, and we'll be in touch with you. Thank you very much, members. That's very helpful. And we now have item 12, which is the next meeting. To note arrange the next meeting held on the 16th of July here at 10 o'clock. And with that, I close the meeting and thank members and officers for their attendance today. Thank you.